All right, how's everybody doing this week? We're back again. This is week 11 with technical writing, English 2575, with me, Professor Ellis. And we got a lot of stuff to go over in today's class because you had pushed some things back in order to let everybody get caught up on the earlier assignments, which means now we're in a little bit of a crunch time where you're going to need to be working on multiple things at the same time, which, practically speaking, is something that you're going to likely experience in the workplace anyways. So it's good that at this point in our class, we can, use um, essentially the safety of the class to give you an opportunity to practice some of these multitasking things that you're going to be called on to do when you're in your career. I don't want anybody to become overwhelmed by the things that I'm asking you to do, because even though I am setting certain deadlines and due dates, if you need more time, and I'll mention this again later, but if you need more time, all you need to do is send me an email. Let me know, like, not necessarily what's going on, because that may be something private and personal. You don't have to tell me that, but just simply say that you need extra time on this, and then tell me when you think realistically you can get whatever assignment it is done. As easy as that. Um, and of course, sometimes things come up and you may have to email me after the fact. But the idea is to try to maintain some communication between yourself and me as much as possible, so that, like, I know that you just haven't, like, dropped off the face of the earth and stopped, working on the class, but that you may have some other legitimate things that are keeping you from doing the assignments in the class for whatever reason. And we can work together to develop a plan, to devise a new deadline, to get things done. Because what I'm more concerned with for everybody is that you give me your best effort on the assignments. I'm looking for your best work. And if that means that you might need an extra day or two to finish something, that's fine. Because then you're going to take that day or two to do your best and show me what you are capable of accomplishing. And that's great. Now, though I do want you to be mindful that in the workplace, this isn't always a possibility. This is something that I encounter a lot in my own work, is that sometimes deadlines are set because work needs to be passed from one person or one team to another person or another team in order for them to do their work. And whenever you get behind, it can actually cause, in a sense, a log jam for other people or for the workflow to progress and for whatever the final deliverable is to be completed, because an earlier step or stage of the process gets held up. It's something you need to know about, but at least as far as our class is concerned in this unusual time that we find ourselves living in, I think we can work around that as long as we're acknowledging how this isn't always the case in the workplace. So for today's class, one first thing we need to talk about is grading. Second thing will be submitting the instruction manual. And then the third thing will be beginning the collaborative project in the class, which will eat up most of our time today. So first off, with grading. The expanded definition projects I'm quite happy with so far. I'm still grading them, but I'll get those grades done as soon as I can. And all of those will be posted on our Open Lab site, and you'll be able to see your grade by clicking on this link here for Check Your Grade. So give me another week and I'll get those done as quickly as I can, because in addition to your grade, I like to give you some feedback as well, so that not only you kind of know what you should pay attention to, but one thing that I will offer to students later on, I'll tell you more about the details on this, is if you want to revisit any of your work to get bonus points added back to whatever grade I gave you, you may do that. That's one way you can use the feedback that I give you. The other, which I think is a lot more important in the long run, is to take the feedback that I give you to polish and do some fundamental revision to those earlier assignments and incorporate those assignments into an e-portfolio or copy and paste them into something that you might post to your LinkedIn.com profile, or to make part of like a writing sample for a job you apply for. Because all these things you're doing in my class, I beg of you, I beseech you, think about how you can use them outside of the class. Think about how they might be something that you can use to show off what you know, what you can do, and how good you are as a communicator, because those are the types of things that will distinguish you in a very competitive job market with a lot of other well-qualified individuals that you're up against for those same jobs. So if there's a way that I can help you through these assignments we do in the class, that you're a requirement of the class, but to have them give you some extra value, by God, let's do that. So please always have that in the back of your mind. So that's for grades. Those will be coming up soon. So the next thing will be the instruction manual. For the instruction manual, the way that I want you to submit these using our Open Lab site is a little bit different than what you've done before. But that's kind of the idea about each of these assignments. I'm wanting you to learn some different things and different ways to use these digital tools that we're using in the class to essentially educate you about what they're capable of, but also to give you some ideas about how you might use them on your own for other projects, other things that you may be doing, whether it be on your own or in your future jobs. So in a sense, for the 1,500 to 2,000 word instruction manual project, which is your last individual project in the class, what I want you to do is publish your instruction manual to the web using Google Docs, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And then you'll create a post on our Open Lab site saying, this is my instruction manual, and you'll link some of the text in that post over to your web-hosted instruction manual. And that's one of the neat things and just the feature-rich nature of Google Docs that I want you guys to know about, is that it's not only a really good and reliable word processor, but it has a lot of other features built into it that you can use, like being able to quickly turn content that you've written in the word processor to turn that into essentially a web page that gets served, hosted by Google Docs. Which, if you can imagine, if you need to disseminate some literature or some work that you've done to a lot of people, that would be a really easy and quick way to do that by simply generating a link to the content online and then sharing that link, whether it be through social media, through email, etc. So I'm wanting you to pick up some ideas about how to use these tools on your own outside of our class. All right, so how are we going to do that? Well, if we scroll down our Open Lab site, going to go past these two posts here. Week 11, this is a week 11 project, submitting your 1,500 to 2,000 word instruction manual project. So first off, because we push things back a week, instead of your instruction manual being due this week, it's now due by Wednesday, November 11th. That's next Wednesday. Wednesdays, as you know from our syllabus and for everything we've been doing so far this semester, is like the time that we've used to divide up our weeks this semester. And again, if you can't be done by next Wednesday, that's fine. What I want you to do is just reach out to me, let me know realistically when you think you can have this completed, and then that'll be the date that I'm going to be looking to see your work being published. Not a big deal. And again, I give you my email address there. You can always reach me at jellis@citytech.cuny.edu. But now, if you've got everything ready to rock and roll by next Wednesday, I give you very explicit directions, both in writing and with these images, these screen captures that are annotated, to show you how to do the different steps in the process. So what I'll do now is show you in the lecture how to do this. So through the lecture, you'll see how to do it, and then you can refer back to what I've posted here on our Open Lab site for the instructions to publish your instruction manual to the web, and then to share that linked with me on a post that you add to our Open Lab site. So here you can see my instructions that I made as a model for you guys to use, right? Now, some things that I glossed over, didn't go into detail on, but I said before in a previous lecture is that you should aim to make your instruction manual look like mine. Now, some of the things that I've done here with mine that I want you to kind of pay attention to as you begin refining your instruction manual to its final version is you can see things like the title page here, in which I center the title with my name, major, and the college that we go to, New York City College of Technology, CUNY, is that this text for the title is actually a type of heading. And the way you do that is not by simply selecting the text and increasing the font size. I select the text for my title, and if you look here in the formatting bar, you can see that normally it's going to be normal text, right? And what we want to do is change that to title. And what that does is, for a document, you can actually alter the settings for each of these different types of headings and different types of content so that you can simply change some of the parameters for the document, and automatically everything in your document will change to whatever you've reconfigured things for, like say the title size, the heading size, the normal text size, even the fonts. All these things can be changed dynamically and essentially saving you work. Because you imagine if you write something that's like, say, 20 pages or 50 pages or 100 pages long, if you had to go back in and change, like someone says, your headings are all the wrong size, you got to change them all to this. Well, if you use some of the affordances of Google Docs, affordances is a word that I want you to put in your notes. And if you're not taking notes, by God, make sure you have out your notepad right now, because you ought to be taking notes whenever I'm giving lectures. The same is true for any of your classes. But this word affordances is an important word for you guys to know. And it fits in with another word that I want you to know called constraints. So affordances are things that you're able to do with a tool or technology. It's the way that you use it. So like, for example, a hammer, like you hit nails with, has the affordance of, it has a handle, meaning you can hold it, right? It's able to hit things. You can hit things with it, whether it be a nail or if you want to knock a wall out. It has different functions that you can use it for. These are all affordances of it. But now there are also certain constraints. Constraints are the things that you can't really do with it, that it's not designed to be capable of doing. But now, in between what are the built-in affordances and the obvious constraints are different ways that you might be able to repurpose something for your own uses. And this is something that comes to us to a quote that I think I've mentioned to you guys before. It comes to us from the science fiction writer William Gibson. He's used this quote in a lot of his works, but it's the street finds its own use for things. And what Gibson is getting at is that, the street, meaning just like, everybody everywhere, you will find inventive uses for different tools and technology, that it's not always just what the designer of the technology intends, that we can find our own uses for things. Same as you imagine like a computer, like it may come with Microsoft Windows, it may have certain programs already pre-installed, but if you know your stuff, you can either design and program your own software to run on it, Or you can think of workflows about how to use different pieces of software to accomplish tasks, not necessarily the way that they were intended, but to produce whatever results that you want. So affordances and constraints. So there's a lot of affordances with a tool like Google Docs that if you take the time to learn it, maybe using lynda.com, like I mentioned in our last lecture, you can find there's many affordances that are not obvious, that once you've learned how to use them, will like really up your game with these types of tools. So, I got my title here on the title page. I added a page break. Remember, you can add a page break by going to Insert, Break, Page Break. Always do that between breaking sections so that you're not like hitting Enter on the keyboard and like you're leading to a lot of formatting problems later on. Now on this table of contents page, you notice the table of contents title, I made a heading 1. And so that means that on that page, that section, that's the main topic for that section. And then everything underneath that is just normal text. But if you notice, for each of the section headings in my table of contents, I bolded those so they stand out, right? Introduction, Section 2, description of the equipment, Section 3, list of materials, those are bolded. But then the subsections, those aren't. Now, if we go to the first real section of the document, the introduction section, I'm going to select that first heading. You can see that's heading 1. Then I have a subsection, 1.1, and that's heading 2, which means that the font size will be a little bit smaller in order to indicate to the reader that this is a subsection or hierarchically underneath introduction, which is the first heading 1, the first heading. And if I had even subsections, you can see I can have heading 3, heading 4. I can keep having smaller and smaller headings, but you don't want to overdo that because I could overcomplicate the hierarchy that you may be employing for the design of your document. I think having 1, 2, maybe 3 headings is plenty enough for this particular project that you're working on. I think for my sample here, I only use 3. Maybe with the directions, I might have used 3. Let's see. Directions 1, heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. That's all I used. I mean, you can use more, but I don't think it's necessary, so it doesn't overcomplicate the hierarchy that you're creating. Again, make sure all the images that you use are of your own making. Okay, no Google image search finds. Don't be afraid of using the drawing tool that's built into Google Docs. Like you can insert drawing and you can make your own drawing that'll pop right into your document where you want it. I'm not grading this on artistic ability. I'm grading this on whether you're trying to communicate these ideas intentionally, like by your own design, by your own thinking, by your own creativity. That's what I'm looking for. I have a glossary here, and then my reference list at the very end. And one thing to note, throughout my sample instruction manual, I have these things in brackets, and it should go without saying, but just to make sure everybody's on the same page, those types of things you don't have to include in yours. They're simply bracketed out, meaning that they're meant to be, in a sense, invisible. They're just there as a note to help you understand what I'm doing and where to find extra resources on your own. All right, so I got my instruction manual here. So what's the first thing that we need to do? We need to publish this to the web. And the way we do that is after you've looked over everything, you're perfectly happy with the way it looks, you're ready for me to grade it, you click on the File menu, and you can see an option here for Publish to the Web, and you click that. Now, when you do this for the first time, you're going to see this screen right here, Publish to the Web. And it has options for link and embed. Let's just leave it at default for a link. And what we want to do is click Publish. And it says, are you sure you want to publish this selection? I'm going to click OK. And then we have a link here. And so it's already highlighted. And so what you need to do is press Control-C on the keyboard or Command-C on a Mac keyboard to copy that. Okay, that's the first thing. After you've done that, we're going to close this window. We're going to leave everything else the way it is by default. Then navigate back over to our Open Lab site. So here I am at our Open Lab course site. You'll want to mouse over the plus sign here for Add New Content, and we're going to click on Post. Now, on this screen, the very first thing that you want to do is scroll down, and under Categories, put a check next to 1500-word instruction manual. This will categorize it so that I'll be able to very quickly find your work and be able to grade it. And it keeps our course site organized as well. Now, after that, what we need to do, and let me bring up a copy of our site so I can see what I had told you in the instructions. So, visit course site. All right. All right, so here in the block editor for new post, you can see that just to make sure everybody remembers this, there's this section at the very top that's in big type, has a large font size. That's for your title for the page. But then remember to click underneath it to then begin writing what goes into the post. That you don't want to put everything inside the title of your post. So in the title, let's put in your name. So I'm going to put in Jason Ellis's apostrophe. And because my name ends in S, I don't put in apostrophe S. If your name ends in a consonant, non-vowel letter, then you'll want to include that apostrophe S. So like my name, like that, right? And then give the title of your instruction manual. So I'm going to say Instruction Manual for Assembling a Skateboard, right? Then I'm going to click down into the content section of my post, and we're going to type in a very short one-sentence description of what this post is about. And I'm just going to say, for this project, I created an instruction manual for assembling a skateboard, period, right? Now, what you'll want to do is highlight the part of your sentence that refers to the instruction manual, so an instruction manual for assembling a skateboard. I highlight that, click and drag my mouse over it, and then you see this icon right here that looks like a piece of chain link, a piece of chain, meaning a link. We're going to click that, and it asks me to search or type URL. Well, right there where my cursor is blinking, I just press Control-V or Command-V if you're on a Mac. That pastes the link from when I published my instruction manual on Google Docs online. I put the link right there, and then I click this little return enter icon at the end, meaning submit the link. And you can see now that text has an underline, indicating that text is now hyperlinked to my instruction manual that I published on the web from Google Docs. After I've done that, I see that I got the link there. If I want to verify, I can click that text and you can see the link underneath, so I know that's good. So I'm ready to publish. And so all you have to do at that point is click the publish icon in the upper right-hand corner and then click publish again. Okay? Now, after you've published it, and it gives you the little confirmation right here that your post is published, click on the title in the title bar of our course site here. That's going to take us back over to our Open Lab site. And if you want to verify that your assignment is submitted successfully, over here on the left in the menu, just click the little down caret next to Student Projects. Click on 1500 word instruction manual, and your post should be right here at the top. And if you don't see it right away, you can scroll a little bit just to make sure, but it should be right at the top if you just submitted it. And then to double check that everything works right, click the link in your post to make sure it takes you back over to the web hosted version of your instruction manual. And if you see that it does, then everything's good, and then I'll grade your work after that. All right. So that's everything for submitting your instruction manual. Again, there isn't a requirement with this particular assignment to do research, but as I've told some folks by email and office hours, it certainly strengthens your work when you have some evidence to support what it is you're saying, especially of a technical nature. That could involve either documentation for certain steps that you're referring to. It could be for definitions for your glossary in your instruction manual. It could be troubleshooting stuff that you want to quote from maybe the corporate website or from another website where people are offering help in whatever it is that you're building an instruction manual for. You can quote that and cite it using APA format. All that's encouraged, and certainly it'll make your project that much stronger for having done that. All right, so let's see. So that's everything for getting your instruction manual turned in. Again, the official due date for that is next Wednesday, which will be November the 11th. But if you need more time, just shoot me an email. Let me know when you plan to turn it in, and that's when I'll be looking to see it get submitted. And I don't want anybody to be blowing a gasket about all this work and how it's beginning to layer up. This is the normal kind of experience that you're going to have like all the time in the workplace. Welcome to the enjoyment, right? But that's just part of it. And the more that you do it, the easier it becomes. I can certainly say that the stress that I feel is tremendous, but my ability to deal with it and still get work done is improved now over what it was in the past. And the more that you do this kind of thing, it strengthens you, it makes you better at it. So it's not something to throw your hands up in the air and run away screaming about. It's just something to understand as a part of the overall learning process. There aren't necessarily tips or tricks for managing and dealing with a lot of this kind of stress and managing many different tasks. It's something that you learn by doing. And so we try to give you a lot of experience in the different classes that you take at City Tech for this. And certainly all that helps, but a large part of it is also going to be real world experience you get once you're in your career. But at least you'll have an idea, an inkling of what it might be like before you have to jump into the deep end of the career that you're beginning. All right, so what we got to do in the next part of class is talk about what's going to consume the remainder of your semester in technical writing. And that's going to be the collaborative project. So let's turn our attention over to that and to some of these posts that I've made for week 11 explaining kind of what's going on and what I'll be doing for you on Wednesday as far as setting up the teams that you'll be working with. So that's up next. Okay, so we're going to talk about the collaborative project that's going to be the last part of our semester. So if you look on our Open Lab course site, what I want you to do is scroll down a little bit. You can see at the very top is week 11 weekly writing assignment. I don't want you to read over that till you find out what all this is about, okay? So we're going to scroll past that. And then we see week 11 project, beginning the team-based collaborative project. And so I'll read through this with you. While you're finishing up your last individual project in the class, we are moving ahead to begin the team-based collaborative projects in the class. This is where you're going to work with a team of students on these. Everybody's going to contribute to the work. Think of each of the following projects as part of an interconnected larger project. Each team member should contribute to each part, but individual team members may take the lead on one part versus the others, depending on their skill set and interests. For example, one team member may take the lead on the research report, which is like the biggest part of this and is the anchor for everything else, and collect contributions from the other team members for the first draft, meaning each person will write different parts or components of the research report, and then it all gets brought together into a first draft, which you can then revise for a final draft. Now, in another example, another team member may take the lead on the presentation or on the website that you will use, that you will make to present your research report's findings. So here are the parts of the collaborative project from the syllabus. And again, all these work together, but they do have different percentages of your final grade. The first is the 4,000 to 6,000 word analytical research report. This is 20% of your final grade. Each team member contributes 1,000 to 1,500 words to a 4,000 to 6,000 word analytical research report on a scientific or technological problem, okay? So before I get into these demonstrated components of that, the idea of this research report is that you're going to find a scientific or technical problem that you're going to research. You're going to find out more about it. And not only are you going to write what you find out about it, but you're also going to, based on your research, provide some solutions to the problem that you've identified. So the project is not intended for you to figure out on your own solutions to the problem, okay? I don't want you to think like you have to solve, Moore's Law, for example. But in your research, you can find what other people have suggested as possible solutions to whatever problem you identify. So first thing is, your team has to think up a scientific or technical problem that you can research and that other people you obviously have done work on and that have provided some solutions that you're going to be able to report. So what does your report have to demonstrate? One, knowledge of the history and context of the problem. This is the background of the problem. And this will be a good part of the writing. It's like you need to situate what that problem is for your reader. Two, knowledge of the causes and nature of the problem. This is what has created the problem, what has led to this being a problem now. Three, ideas for solving the problem. And so this is where you're going to be looking at different sources to find what people have suggested as possible solutions to it. Four, the ability to explain the problem and offer possible solutions to a general audience. So in those earlier parts of the project where you may be pouring through a lot of technical detail, going into different jargon. Here you want to be able to explain and offer possible solutions based on your research for a general audience. So here we're actually shifting the tone and the language used in the report so that we're reaching a different audience in this particular section of it. And then 5, the ability to integrate written work with the written work of a partner or partners in a coherent report, meaning that when you're done with this research report, what we will have finished is something that sounds like it's written by a single person, that has a single unifying voice. And we're going to work on that beginning next week. But that's something to keep in mind, that it's something that's written by 5 or 6 different people, but you got to make it sound like it's written by a single person. And 6, knowledge of proper research report format, which I'll show you guys. At least 6 library source citations must be included. And I say here, non-library source citations are encouraged, but they do not count toward the 6 library sourced sources. Okay, so you need to get some of your research from the library, but there's probably going to be some other research outside the library that you can also use. And of course, everything needs to be in APA format. Now, once you've got this research report done, the next step will be to adapt it, transform it into the next thing, which is a 7 to 10 minute oral analytical research report on a scientific or technical problem. That's 10% of your grade. So basically, you turn that much longer research report into a 7 to 10 minute presentation. The presentation will have you guys talking. It'll also be supported by maybe a PowerPoint or a Google Slides presentation, a visual presentation in the background. And we'll talk about some different ways of doing that later on in the process. Next week, we're going to focus on the research report, and then the week after, we'll switch over to talking about the presentation. Some things that you'll want to pay attention to. And again, all this is based on that research report. So if you've accomplished everything in the research report that needs to be done, doing it in the oral presentation isn't that hard. It's just a matter of being able to whittle it down into something smaller, because your research report is going to be way too long, to try to read it aloud in 7 to 10 minutes. You have to pick and choose the main points and focus on just the highlights in your presentation. And so some of the things that I'll be looking for in it are: 1, knowledge of oral presentation techniques and conventions; 2, the ability to organize a presentation effectively; 3, the ability to incorporate various media into the presentation, including appropriate computer software; 4, awareness of audience; 5, the ability to communicate the value of the product or service in clear spoken English. And in this case, what I want you to do is be able to communicate the value of the solutions that you propose to in clear spoken English. The ability to answer audience questions. And we're going to have to be creative with that, because, as you know, we're all not in the same place right now. The ability to collaborate productively with a partner or partners. And 8, the ability to explain the problem and offer possible solutions to a general audience. Okay. Now, the next part is a website advertising a product or service responding to the analytical research report and oral presentation. This is 10% of your grade. Certainly not a huge part, but it's something that that obviously you do want to get those points on to get an A in the class, right? So with this, basically you're going to create a website using OpenLab, and I'm going to show you how to do that, to create your own site, something totally separate from our OpenLab course site. And you'll create it and populate it with content from your analytical research report. The idea being is that the website becomes a way of advertising, of showcasing not only your research, but also those solutions that you find through your research. And so here, the things I'll be looking at are: one, knowledge of the product or service offered, of pertinent market forces, and of the potential consumer base. I'll explain all this in a little bit more detail in a future lecture. Two, basic knowledge of web page design and composition, including appropriate software. The website will be based on your presentation, and it is encouraged to be integrated into your presentation, perhaps to demonstrate how your team is promoting your product or service, which will be a reflection of some of those solutions that you find for your research report. And here's an important thing also: all graphics, logos, design, and text must be created by your team. Again, it's not an art contest, but if you have a member of your team who knows how to build a website or has design skills, this can be a way for them to contribute a lot to the overall project, in addition to what writing they may do on the analytical research report. And then the very last part of the project, this is something to do after you've done with everything, is the 500-word report on collaborations, 10% of your final grade. And what this is you will write together a record of what everybody did to complete the project. Where did people make their contributions? Everybody needs to contribute in some way to all the different parts, but some people will probably give more than others on different components of the overall collaborative project. And so you need to make a record of that. And this is something that through your meetings that you will have together to discuss the project as it goes on, I think will be important. And someone may want to keep a record of that. But with this particular reflective writing, you can also talk about the challenges that you faced and how you resolve those challenges, how you overcame them. I think this is important for you to think about, that it's certainly, I want everybody to complete the collaborative project, okay? But you're going to encounter lots of problems, both in terms of the personnel that you work with, as well as some of the technological challenges you're going to encounter, because we're all separated and having to use digital tools to get the work done. You can talk about that. Everything doesn't have to be sunshine in your report on collaboration. I want to know what worked, what didn't, what was a problem, how did you try to overcome it? Did some things just were insurmountable? Let me know as best you can in this collaborative report, and I'll talk about that when we get toward the end of the semester. So don't over worry about that right now. But now here I give you a graphical overview of how you might visualize this project. So the main thing that you consider that informs everything is the scientific or technological problem. Think, what is a problem in need of a solution? Identify, what is the problem? What is the problem's background? What are possible solutions? Those questions filter into your report. Okay, that's the chunk, the biggest chunk of your collaborative project. Now the report is going to feed into your website and is going to feed into your presentation. These two things are based on what you do in the report. So the main thing to get in your mind right now is the report has to be done first. That's where you want to put all your time and resources to accomplish as quickly as possible, so that what you put in the report can then begin to go into the website and into your oral presentation. And as you can see here, all components should support each other, cohesive, interconnected, synergistic, meaning that all these things work together to make a stronger message than them separately. And then you see up to the side here, reflection report. This is like a meta document. It's a document about the process of making those other documents. And so your experience of writing the report, of building the website, of making your presentation should be reported in that reflection report at the end of the process. Now, continuing what I have written here, The main part of the collaborative project is the research report. It anchors everything. It should be completed first and adapted or transformed for use in the other deliverables, the website and the presentation. The report, website, and presentation will be submitted on our Open Lab course site. Also, throughout the project, the team should keep track of the work that each person does and compile that into a reflection report that will be submitted via email to me after your collaborative project is completed. Now, to distribute the workload better, you will work in a new team of 5, and in one case, 6 persons. These teams are randomly assigned using a number list that I generated from random.org. So I wanted it to be as fair as possible. We didn't have quite enough students in the different majors to have just a single group of electrical engineering students. So I've distributed those guys into all of the computer science major guys. I think you're going to be able to find ways to choose a topic that will be to everybody's benefit in each of your teams, the way that I've distributed these things randomly. Now, for your reference, I'm including the teams below. Now, I will get in touch with each team via email for this week's weekly writing assignment. So stay tuned for that email that I'm going to send to each team individually, okay? Now, here's a note. Remember, don't confuse these collaborative teams with your peer review teams on the first 3 projects in the course. If you're still working on individual projects and need peer review feedback, you should give and receive it with your peer review teams that you've already been working with. So that's separate from what we're now doing on these collaborative projects. Separately, you will begin working with this new team on the collaborative projects. There may be some overlap between your peer review team and the new collaborative teams. This was just by chance and not by design. In addition to reaching out to you by email, I will detail how I would like you to begin the project together in this week's weekly writing assignment, which I'll post soon. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. And again, please make sure, obviously, if you're listening to me right now, you're listening to the lecture. So make sure you listen to it carefully so you know exactly what's going on with all this. I got all the teams labeled here by your last name, and I'm going to send emails to each of these teams to start the process of getting you working together. So we got 5 teams, 1 team of 6, and the other teams of 5 people each. So it distributes the workload a little bit better than with the smaller peer review teams that you were working with before. So that brings us to the weekly writing assignment, or how we're going to get things started for this. All right, so with the weekly writing assignment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send an email to each team. And to begin your team's collaborative project, the first things that you'll need to do are 1, introduce yourselves, 2, provide other contact info besides just using email, and 3, choose a topic for your research report. To accomplish these things, I will start a new email thread for each collaborative project team. And again, remember, these collaborative teams are separate from the peer review teams that you worked with on the first 3 projects. Now you can work with your peer review teams if you still need peer review on like an earlier assignment, not a problem, but just keep them straight, you know, which team you're talking about. During this week, each team member should reply all to my email to introduce yourself, you know, let everybody know your major, your hobbies, maybe your interests. If you're already working in the field, you might mention that where you work. And make a note if you already know someone in your team, because I think there were a couple of cases where there's overlap with the earlier peer review team. So you can say like, oh, so-and-so and I were already in the peer review team before. So that's good to let people know, so that way they know like you guys already know one another. Then continuing, provide a phone number or suggest another way for your teammates to communicate besides email. And so for this project, I don't need to see all of your communications, okay? And in fact, it would actually be better if you strategize together a way that is useful for you all to work together as easily as possible. You can use Facebook, WhatsApp, you might use Slack, any other like social media, other type of communication technology, I don't care. As long as it's something that all the team members have access to, okay? And so I would encourage you to part of this early introductions is to offer some suggestions so that you guys can figure that out. You might begin maybe by text messaging one another, by exchanging your phone numbers. And then from your text messages, you may devise a better way to work together, whether it be starting Zoom meetings, Google Hangouts, and then also like text-based collaboration like with Slack, Microsoft Teams you have access to through Office 365 with CUNY. You could also use Google Docs. I mean, there's all these different ways that you can use, including social media like Facebook, Twitter, etc. You guys come together and figure out what works best for your team. But just make sure you keep everybody on board. If some person says, like, I have trouble with X, you shouldn't use X unless it's a team member can help that person do whatever needs to get done to be able to use it, okay? Now, after you've given some alternate way of communicating with one another, I want you to list 3 possible scientific or technical problems that you can potentially research for your team's research report. Now, just like I mentioned with the earlier projects, you need to pick something that is useful to you. I think for the most part, you shouldn't be picking things like global warming, protecting homes from hurricanes. Let's see, what's something else? Flood control in New York City. These types of things are certainly technical and scientific problems, but most of you are going into very technical computer networking, programming, electrical hardware careers. So the problem you choose should reflect that. They should be connected to that, okay? So think of 3 problems that relate to what your major is, to what your future career is going to be. And so, for example, like Moore's Law is like a problem that comes to mind for folks in computing, because eventually we're going to reach a point where we're either getting diminishing returns on the technology that we can create, the microprocessors that we create, and how are we going to overcome that if we want to continue this trajectory that we have of computer power increasing and the cost of it for that increased computer power decreasing over time. So that's a potential problem. You could also talk about specific computer exploits like rowhammer, for example, or you could talk about types of exploits, such as like privilege escalation problems, which would involve rowhammer and other things. So those are just a couple of examples that popped in my mind. What I would encourage you to do is, if things don't like immediately crystallize in your mind as potential problems to investigate and find solutions for, go into the databases and type in like your field and problems or solutions and just see what comes up, because you might find some leads, generate some ideas that you could then incorporate into your email to share with your teammates. So again, the purpose of your report is to present what you can learn about the problem and provide some solutions, also based on your research. So think about these possible problems based on your studies and interests. Since you are all studying computers and/or electrical systems, I would recommend that you focus on problems related to that instead of problems not directly related, such as global warming I mentioned. Coming up with 3 possible problems might require a little bit of library research, so don't be afraid to check out the databases. Now, after you and your teammates begin exchanging these emails, look at the possible problems for similarities or connections. Everyone should reply all, okay, remember to reply all, to comment on the problems, generating ideas and arguing for or against some of the opinions. After this discussion, a clear winner might emerge, or one team member can devise a vote of the top 2 or 3 candidates, and then you make your selection. At this point, or even before, after you've made your first introductions via email, because that's really the only thing I need to see is that everybody's introduced themselves to one another. That gives you credit for the weekly writing assignment, your introduction and your 3 problems. After that, that discussion part, if you want to take that discussion into text messaging or social media or some other place, feel free to do that. That's totally fine. All I need to see is the beginning, where you make your introductions and I can read your 3 possible problems that each team member suggests. And then, after you've all decided, whether it be over email or somewhere else, which problem you're going to research, I want one person from your team to send me an email to jellis@citytech.cuny.edu and let me know what that problem is that you're going to research. Now, when you send that email, in the CC box, include your other team members, because they need to see that you actually sent that thing to me, okay? So send it to me, but CC all of your teammates, and all you got to do is tell me what the topic is. If I think it's great, I'll just reply like, I received it, sounds great, run with it. If maybe I have some suggestions to add, I will reply all so that the person who sent the email and your teammates all see my email with some other ideas to maybe refine it to make it better for your research projects. I want to make sure everybody's got a good plan going into this. Now, after you've selected a problem for your research report, that email should come to me by Wednesday, November 11th. That's next Wednesday. Okay? So that gives you a whole week after my lecture on Wednesday, November 4th, to discuss this, pick a topic, and send me that email. Okay? So you need to be staying tuned this week so that you can get that done. All right, so that's the weekly writing assignment. That should get you started. And then in next week's lecture, I'm going to talk more about the research report. And in the meantime, make sure you guys figure out a good way to stay in touch with one another with your collaborative teams. And if you need help with that, reach out to me. I'll certainly do whatever I can to give you guys some ideas to help out with that if you need that. But whatever works for you to get the work done, I don't care about. What's more important to me is the deliverables. That's the things that you make and that you make together, okay? Now, throughout this process, if any team has any problem with any individual team member, please reach out to me, okay? Even though we're not meeting together, that doesn't mean that I'm hands off. If I need to know that something's going on because someone's not pulling their weight, someone's disappeared, someone's not doing the work, someone's creating antagonism, whatever it might be, I need you guys to let me know what's going on because I'm not looking over your shoulder on this. You may be conducting all this work, say, in Slack, and so I'm not really there. So if I need to be involved, and we're obviously all adults on this, but I'm still the instructor, you're the students, it is my role to help out in any way that I can, and that includes any kind of interpersonal conflict that may come up, or any issue in which a person's not doing their share of the work. The team member or team members should reach out to me, give me some details over email, and then what I can do is either reach out individually to the offending person that's not doing the work or is causing problems, or if it would be better for me to meet with all the team members and have a discussion together, I'll send out what's called a doodle poll, which will help us pick a time where we can all meet and then we'll have a conversation together. Okay, either way, because I want to make sure that everybody does really great work on this. Everybody works together to get this done because all of your grades are dependent on this. For these collaborative grades, they're not individual grades. The grade for each deliverable goes equally to all the team members, okay? So if there's any problems, let me know sooner rather than later so that I can intervene and get you guys on track. Because I want to see great projects. I want everybody to be happy with their grades they receive on the work. So I'm going to let you guys go for now. I'll have office hours this Wednesday, 3 to 5 p.m. So stay tuned to our Open Lab site for the link for that. Okay? So take care. And if anything else comes up, you just shoot me an email, jellis@citytech.cuny.edu. Talk to you later.